Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you walk and your talk is constant.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Death to Vanilla podcast. And I'm so excited that this is actually the first one I haven't screwed up saying the words. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Steven Burkhart. I'm the host, and welcome to the show, my co-host.
Hi, I'm Rylynn Trader.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be sharing with you stories, tips, and tricks to courageously create, boldly innovate, and experiment so that you get results that no one else experiences because they're either not brave enough or not creative enough to try them. And today, speaking of bravery, we're going to talk about controversy and taking a stand on things on social media, whether or not you should do that, how that affects your brand, how that can affect your exposure and connection of your audience. And so I'm excited to dive into that a little bit today. Have you seen any brands do this particularly well?
I think that navigating controversy in general is a very, very difficult thing to do. I think there's very, very few brands that can pull it off in a way that is okay, right? So I think that one brand that we kind of saw that did this, I guess we could do a bad example instead. I think
Yes.
one
I love
brand
bad examples.
is probably Bud Light, right?
Yeah.
Like they decided to take a stand on something recently that didn't work out for them. And that's because their client base didn't necessarily need to have a stand on that, if that makes sense. So I would say that it's really hard. It's really, really hard for brands. And if that's what your brand is about, right? Like if you're a political person or someone like that, taking those stands are really important. But you don't always have to do that. I would say one really good example of this is in June, a lot of brands are all of a sudden supporting of Pride and LGBTQ. And I'm not saying that that's bad, but throughout the year, where is that support, right? Like if that's something your brand...
It's literally like the joke about corporations in that time.
It's almost laughable because it's like, yeah, that's awesome that your brand stands for that and it's awesome that you're saying anything, but like where is that support the rest of the year, right? Like I didn't know that was something your brand even stood for until that month rolls around, which obviously is a month that's directed towards that, but it's important to like mention those qualities or like things that your brand support throughout the rest of the year. Like showing people, because that's about your brand personality. And if people don't know that, then it's kind of a shock to them and kind of takes them like off guard when they learn that maybe it's something they don't agree with or whatever else. Because there's so many things you can take stands on, and people are like, "What the heck?" Like maybe like pickles, and someone's like, "Oh, I hate pickles."
Right.
So just it depends.
So I think yes, absolutely, and I think that the thing that is starting to develop in my mind is like, there's a difference between, well, let's just start here. Authentic controversy and authentic stands on things as opposed to opportunistic stands on things,
absolutely.
right? So, for example, your thing about June is all about like, oh, shoot, it's Pride Month. We should probably look like we support them, right? Whereas like an authentic brand would be the one that supports throughout the year. Maybe not to like the same level of exposure because... You know, no matter what you believe in, you don't want to talk about that one thing all the time unless it's
Absolutely.
like a core value of your business. And maybe your business is like, you know, LGBTQ like centric. But I think that's should be something that, like if that's something you support, that isn't something you're going to talk about all the time, like in comparison to anything else that you support. It wouldn't make sense to talk about it all the time. But if it's the only time, then that's when it starts ringing like the red flags of like, oh, like I think they're actually just wanting social media shares. I'm not actually sure this is something they actually care about, and then it actually hurts your brand.
I think one thing recently I was working with this brand, and they do a lot of awareness days for people with disabilities, and I think it's really cool because it's not just like one awareness day a month, right? They're doing a bunch of different awareness days where it's telling you about these diseases that actually need awareness. Like it's not just something that they're just like, oh, how do we make money off this? They really want people to know about this disease because not everyone knows about it. And it's that authenticity. It tells you like about what your brand is about without capitalizing on it, right? Because I think once you start capitalizing on people's I'm having trouble
like
finding
emotions or
yes,
something. Yeah.
I think that kind of people start to shy away from that.
Well, I mean, it's just like anything else in life. It's like, you know, if you ask yourself, why is this person sharing this information with me? And the answer doesn't feel wholesome, like immediately casts a little bit of doubt onto things. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, like, you know, like politically, if someone passes this law or that law, like, what's really happening? What's really behind all this? And once you erode that trust, like no matter which side of the aisle you are on politically, like there's a level of distrust of what anyone says, where it's like basically we just throw it all out as garbage, which maybe is right, maybe is wrong. I don't care. That's not really the point of this podcast, but it's just the idea that once you've like worn away the authenticity of your brand, you then no longer have like positive context for what you say, and people are no longer going to connect with it, and it's going to feel like manipulation, where, as you're talking about with that brand that you worked with, it sounds like that's like a core part of what they are, and they support it all the time, talk about it all the time, and so it becomes a really positive force to continue the momentum they're trying to build.
Rather than it be like this controversial thing where they're getting canceled for supporting something that they don't talk about the rest of the year. It's something that they're continuously talking about without, you know, taking advantage of a situation.
For sure. Well, and I think the other thing that we could discuss a little bit too is like the idea of like things that are happening and how you respond to them, as opposed to like self-generated conflict. So like for me, when I think of like self-generated conflict that's positive and quite hilarious, quite frankly, is like the Wendy's Twitter account is like a classic example of like Wendy's would go on there and get like snarky towards like other like burger brands, like maybe not like on their profiles. I mean, sometimes, but like sometimes the people's response are like, oh, like Wendy's, your burgers suck. And they're like, not as much as Burger King. It's way funnier than that. I just came up with that right now. Not the writer for the Twitter account. But you know what I mean? Something like that is like self-generated. So it's not political, right? Yeah. It's not some hot button social issue that's going to create like a lot of negative, you know, feelings about your brand. It's something that you're intentionally doing. So there's like a little bit more control over what's happening, which I think is in the right hands is a powerful tool to generate interest in your account. Because why do we love reality TV? Because it's a train wreck.
Yes.
And if you can make a little bit of a train wreck that does some wonders for your business, I mean, why not?
I mean, I love to watch a good train wreck. Don't we all?
Right.
Makes you feel a lot better about yourself. Let's be honest.
Right. That's what's the juicy drama. So, so I think, you know, a brand could take that and say like, okay, like what kind of things could you do in your business to generate just a little bit of drama, right? But in a healthy, positive way. Like, I don't think anyone thinks that Wendy's is just like bad-mouthing everyone else.
Yeah.
They're able to navigate that in a way that is just tasteful enough that you're like, oh, it's just like in good fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
I don't know how your business can do that. That's only something that really only you can answer for yourself. But I think it's worth exploring and at least beginning to talk about. And if you're a big corporation, you probably have too much red tape to do it.
I think on the other side of that spectrum, especially for Wendy's, like there's the controversy that's out of your hands, right? There's something that happens with your business, or I guess kind of happens to your business. I guess going back to the Bud Light thing, where something came up and people didn't really like it. And I would say that their response to it was not super great, right? It was late. It wasn't well received, and they didn't really retract any statements or anything like that, which they put themselves in a position in which it would be hard to retract any statement or anything of that sort. And I think too often, especially with influencers, I think we see this, people just get canceled because there's a lack of response and there's a lack of a timely manner to it. So recently I just took this like social media training, and I was super excited to take it because I'm like, oh, I'm going to learn about how to make great reels and how to be trending all the time. False. One big thing they teach you is about being prepared when a crisis happens. You need to have a plan and action for your business, regardless of how small you are, for how you're going to respond to something that's controversial. Because if you're a clothing brand and maybe someone comments, "Oh my gosh, I got a piece of clothing and it literally caught my whole house on fire." You know, super dramatic, but you need to be able to respond to that in a timely manner and in a way that doesn't, you know, make that person feel like you're being inauthentic to them or anything of that sort. There's also knowing whether or not you should respond at all, right? Maybe they're lying or it's some like random account. But I forget what the controversy was. I think it was Pepsi, but Pepsi with Kendall Jenner, when she like did that whole, you know, you guys know about it, but the response time was a little lacking. It wasn't as fast as it could have been, and it wasn't as soon as it should have been. And sometimes with certain things like that, you should wait a little while to see what your response should be. But I would say for something as big as that, they should have responded and addressed it a little bit sooner,
right?
Which they kind of lacked to do. And I think that really hurt their brand and their reputation. And it did take them a while to recover from that.
Right, like we're still talking about it now.
Yeah, it was
classic bad example.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair, and I think that you know, in part of the slow response may have been some of that red tape of like how do we respond to this, and then like 20 people get to weigh in on that. And I think that's one of the drawbacks of a bigger company is like, are you empowering your social media group with enough wisdom on how to respond in an appropriate, brand appropriate way? But
yeah,
I think some of the things that people are missing is like, and I know Gary Vaynerchuk does this not for controversial sake, but for testing sake. I think Team Gary V is a separate account, and they may even have another account that they like will test content on. And then if it performs well, Gary Vaynerchuk will post it. If it doesn't perform well, it either gets like tossed out or optimized in another way. They have like essentially a focus group.
Yeah.
That they're using as finding out what the response is on something. Now that's for non-controversial things. So I don't know how you navigate that, but I mean like it could be as simple as like just bringing in some group of people who aren't like so in the woods that they can't see the tree, or no, wait, you're so close to the tree you can't see the forest. Whatever the story is,
you know,
they're just too close to it, and so they can't really get perspective on like what they're about to post and what the implications are. Is have some sort of focus group, a group of people that you trust that can have commentary on it and can look in that and say like, well, did you ever think about like how that looks or how that feels, or like, oh, that's racist, or oh, that's like tasteless, or whatever the thing is that like you may have been so sold out on the idea, but then you get that perspective, and then it's like, okay, maybe you're right, maybe we should like navigate this a little more different. It doesn't mean you have to toss the idea out.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can have good controversy and then be able to have some context around it where we're like, okay, like we shared it to some people and like we've adjusted it in a way that's helpful, and then now we posted it, and now we've generated the stuff. So again, though, I get the appeal, and there's statistics to show that you talking and taking a stand on political and social issues can make a difference in your business. But to me, I think the drawbacks are too significant and too unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be honest, for most brands, like I don't care what the owner of Starbucks' stance is on something.
Yeah.
I just don't. I just want to show up and get my $7 coffee that's overpriced and be happy.
Yes, and I think there's a difference, right? Like Starbucks doesn't have to share certain stuff, but the owner can share whatever he wants because guess what? It's his brand. Yeah. Whereas for the business, like you don't always have to share stuff with your business's brand, and it's the fine line of being like, this is my brand and this is my business brand.
Right.
And sometimes there is a little overlap, which can be a good thing, bad thing, but at the end of the day, it's you getting canceled rather than your business.
Yep.
Like you're still going to make money. People are not like you, but you're still going to make money. Let's be honest.
Yeah, back in the day, Howard Schultz would have been just fine if he got canceled. He would have still gone and cried in his $100 bills, knowing that people didn't like him, and would have been just fine.
Just fine.
So what kind of controversies have you navigated? Have you tried to create some? Have you tried to create your own reality TV show of drama on social media? Right? Your own train wreck. And if it's been successful, let us know. If it hasn't been successful, also let us know. We'd love to give you a shout out. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, we'd love to hear those stories, learn how to like navigate that, and we'd love to share other stories of people who have navigated this well. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful for you, that you are able to courageously create, boldly innovate, and experiment even better than before. Thank you for watching. Hey.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters. We know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you're walking your talk is constant.